I was born in Washington, D.C. My dad worked for the CIA, and we moved every 2 years on average. All those places he said, and then Japan for an LDS mission, and then, but my parents both were Utah people before they moved all over, so I had a lot of influence at going to art museums. My dad, he didn't like his job. He wanted to be an artist, so he'd come home from work, and wherever we lived, he had one of the bedrooms was an art studio, and he'd work on art. So of course that was a big influence on me. He started with wood carving with some German wood carvers in Munich and in Berchtesgaden in the mountains, and then moved on to other types of carving and clay sculpture and casting and bronzing and all that stuff. And then later on he started doing painting too, and he'd do painting and both. He just died about a year ago. But anyway, yeah, so, but he stuck with the CIA and with his Army service. He retired early, and I'll probably never be able to retire because don't have a lot of money, so I'll just, but he retired at 50, so my dad was retired 16 years before the age that I am right now, so, because I'm 66. 56, that was a good year, right? Anyway, yeah, him too. And so I always wanted to be an artist, and I take that from my dad's working on art a lot, and when we lived in Europe and back east near Washington, D.C., he would take us to the Smithsonian Art Museum sometimes, and we'd go to art museums in Europe, and we'd travel sometimes, and whichever big city we went to, he'd take us to an art museum, and he'd tell us a little bit about art history and stuff like that. So, you know, including like the Louvre and all the museums in Munich and well, just all over, you know. And but along with me wanting to be an artist my whole life, my parents always told me, don't study art. You can't make a living off of it. So even though that's what I wanted to study, I didn't. I started off, I thought, well, I know I'm smart, even though I'm lazy. You know, not one of those types that just gets by with a minimum of homework, you know, because it's like, oh, I don't like doing homework. So, but anyway, so I thought, but I know I'm smart because of the ACT scores and stuff like that. So I should go into the sciences. So I thought, okay, electrical engineering, that sounds fun. So I tried that for a year, and that was dismal. And so then I went into horticulture, and I thought, hey, this is funner, this is better. You know, there's still sciences involved, but it's not, it's more up my alley, you know. And then I went, then I interrupted my studies to go on an LDS mission to Japan. And then when I came back, I lived with my grandma in Salt Lake. My parents were in Germany. So I went from Japan to Germany, and after a few months there, I came to stay with my grandma in Salt Lake and worked for a while. My sister was there too. And then went to the U of U for a couple quarters and took some ceramics classes and loved it so much, I thought, this is what I'm going to study. I'm going to be a potter. Not wheel thrown, but hand building, you know, and stuff, because I had good success in those two classes I took and stuff. So I pondered that seriously a lot, but this strong feeling came to me, nope, you should not major in ceramics, you should study art. I mean, like painting, drawing, and stuff like that, not the clay stuff. And I thought, but I can't do that, because that's what my parents said I can't do. And everybody else says that, so I didn't. You know, and I went back to, and after a while I went back to BYU, started taking chemistry again for horticulture classes, and then I thought, hey, this graphic design, I could study design and be a graphic designer. That's close to art, and you can make a living at it. So I went through 2.5 years in that, and just did not have, I liked it, it was fascinating, but I did not have the temperament for being a designer. The pressure, deadlines and stuff like that. And so, and while I was doing that, I had been taking some painting classes in the fine arts department, and finally I made the switch and majored in art. and that was a good thing. And I majored in printmaking, and I don't know why I majored in that instead of painting, but I felt, oh, that will help me be more precise and less messy. You have to be more precise and stuff, and it will give me broader horizons. I can just paint anyway. I took painting classes anyway. So then, after I graduated, I already had stuff in a nice gallery in Salt Lake, and I'd even sold one of my first things in a gallery. And oh, this is great! This is great! I'll work on art when I graduate. Maybe I'll have to do, a part-time job, something else, But as soon as I graduated, I don't know how else to put it, and I don't know why this happened. I lost the art spirit, and everything I did. I was, while I was in school, I had gotten to the point where I was making nice monotypes and monoprints and regular prints and some nice paintings and stuff like that, and get in a show here and there, and like the Utah State Show and all that stuff. And then everything I did, that's horrible. Well, one of my problems is not knowing what's good while I'm making it. Oh, this is a wonderful painting. Oh, this is great. And come back 2 days later and go, oh, that's terrible. That's horrible. And what's irritating is I don't know if you know who Chris Young is. You might have seen some of his paintings. He was studying some engineering technology program, but he was an artist, and they allowed him, without taking the foundations program, they allowed him to come in and take art classes for majors because he was so good at drawing and painting. And we would say, Chris, you're better than all of us. You should major in this. So he did. He majored in that. He sold his final BFA. Everything he did turned out nice, good. And he sold his final BFA show to a gallery in California. They bought it outright. They didn't say, oh, we'll take these and you'll get 50% commission when they sell. They said, we'll pay you outright for these, and whatever you produce from now on. So for years, that's what he just had that one gallery, and everything he painted went to that gallery, and they bought it outright, even if it didn't sell. But then during the recession in 2008 and stuff, there was all sorts of problems. He's now teaching at UVU and still doing some art, but and I thought, oh, that I could be like that, get to that point. Well, I don't care. No, they don't need to buy my stuff. I just want to just be in galleries and sell stuff and do that for a living. But since nothing I was doing was turning out good, it didn't work. So that's one of the first things I was going to mention. Principles or things to remember is, have you heard you have to paint 100 paintings before you can get a good painting? Well, for me, it was more like 1,000. I mean, every once in a while I'd have a good painting, that I kept or gave to somebody, or occasionally got in a show or sold or something like that, or some nice prints, mono prints. But I'd say it might be in the thousands of paintings that I've thrown away or painted over or sanded down or something like that. And so you can see the two ends of the spectrums, and I don't know where you are, but if you're at the far end like me, don't feel bad, you're not alone. You may need to throw away 1,000 paintings before you get to where you want to be. I eventually started retail framing. I thought, well, that's sort of close to art, you know. And I worked in retail framing for 10 years, and finally in 2000, I started my own business making frames for artists mainly. I occasionally did other stuff, but it was mostly for artists who were selling in galleries and stuff like that, handmade frames and hand finished and all that stuff, and even some for Tom, there, Tom. But then I don't know, 10 years ago, I started doing a lot, 15 years ago, I started doing a lot of still life, little still life paintings, and was selling those. And I thought, hey, okay, I can build upon this, you know. And then that recession happened in 2009, and so things stopped going well there. And so I just did the framing, occasionally dabbled in art until about 10 years ago I got really serious. I said, oh, I gotta get serious about this. I studied art. Why am I should make something out of it so I don't feel stupid. I was, well, yeah, he studied art, but he doesn't do it, you know. So I got serious about it, and I always thought, I prefer to paint people more than still lifes, although I like still lifes and landscape stuff. So I studied anatomy more, and was always, whenever I was near people, I was sort of looking, oh, that's how their ear, and go, oh, look at their nose, that's quite different. And, you know, sort of without trying to get caught, looking how the hairlines go and everything like that.
How many times did you get slapped?
Pardon?
How many times did you get slapped?
No, I was like, gosh, Muhammad Ali, he could dodge like that. But and I started painting people, and I thought, hey, I'm doing really good. And then 2 months later, I look at the paintings that I did and go, those are horrible. What was I thinking? That doesn't look like a human, unless you squish their head or something. But anyway, so, but I kept working at it, and finally, when I was asking people, okay, here's some paintings, what do you think of these? And instead of going, well, I sort of like this part of it here. That's a nice color there, you know. I started being, those are nice. I really like that one in particular. And it was getting, it was starting to get so people like my paintings, but I didn't know how to sell them. So you got to build up a body of work, you know, before you apply to a gallery or anything like that. And I knew that it's hard to get in galleries. But finally, I started doing research on galleries and all around the country, and thought, wow, I'd like to be in Santa Fe. That would be nice. And Salt Lake and Park City, you know. So I studied those galleries and applied to some, but got no answer, or else, you know, oh, thanks for applying, but we don't think you're a good fit for our gallery. And finally, I found this one in Cannon Beach, Oregon, and I thought, and I knew somebody who was in it, and I looked, I thought, I like the art that's in there. I think mine would be a good fit for it. So I emailed them or something like that, and it turns out they were just a new gallery, and they were still looking for artists to fill their thing, and they said, hey, we love your work. So I got in there, and then some other little places, and gradually, I quit doing framing for other people. I still will make frames for myself, but I quit doing framing for other people last fall. So right now, I'm a full-time artist, but we live very frugally. And we don't have any more kids at home and stuff. And so, well, there's a grandchild living there, but she supports herself. But so I'm sort of in a scary part of my life right now. But for some of you, so they said it would be good to talk about the business of art. So I already told you about getting in galleries. It's really good to have a connection. get a connection, even if they don't accept you, sort of keep up that connection if you can, because maybe they will in the future as your work changes, or as maybe they lose some artists or something like that. Keep up connections that you do have, and get it. And where I sell my art is in anywhere I can, everywhere I can, within limits. And like, if you've heard of the Utah Art Market, and the person who does that also does the 135 show, which is twice a year. I sell stuff there. And like when you did the Art in the Park thing, I did in that. And here's another thing, like one show I did at this, at one place down in Alpine, I think, or Highland. The first year I did it, I just brought a table and put some paintings on the table, and I was still sort of new at it, and it was one where you sell your own, you know, and so I had a thing for the cards, and I sold more than $1,000 worth, and I thought, okay, that show's worth going to, you know, and then, so when I did it 2 years later, or a year or two later, I thought, oh great, I'm gonna get another $1,000 from this show, you know, after expenses, but after expenses, I actually lost $10 on the next show. Yeah, and so that's the way it goes. And for the Utah Art Market, that's 4 times a year, and I've been doing it for about 5 years. And it started slow, and after expenses and I figured travel, not just gasoline, but so much a mile also for, well, right now I do 50 cents a mile. I figured that as part of my costs for gas and wear and tear on the car and maintenance and stuff like that per mile. And if I buy any food, because I'm gone all day, if I buy food there, I add that in. And I have grid walls and other display stuff, and I charge myself, I figure $20 per show where I use my grid walls or other displays, and I add that to the costs. And the fee to get in the show, say it's $150 for a booth or something like that. And what else? And this isn't counting supplies, framing and stuff. Of course, if I do my own framing, that saves a lot of money. But so then Utah Market, I was starting to get, at the beginning there was, after expenses, I was getting about sometimes $400 a show after all my costs. And then including the costs that my supplies for framing and stuff, I figured out this painting, the frame cost me about this much to make and stuff like that. But anyway, so I was making that much, and then I was getting so that I was earning about somewhere between $1,000 and $2,000 per show after expenses in general. And so I thought, okay, yeah, that's great. And that was consistent for about 3 years. And then the last Utah Art Market in February, I sold one small painting, and I actually lost, after expenses, I lost $150. Yeah, and I go, so the reason I'm telling you this is that things are going to go like this, but you got to stick with it anyway. And so I'm not going, oh, I'm not going to do Utah Art Market anymore. No, I'm going to keep going, because maybe next time I'll earn $1,000 or something like that, or at least $500, and make it, you know, worthwhile. Also, so for the 135 show, which is twice a year that the person puts on, it's like a 1 or 2 day show in Salt Lake. Every show, I sit there and go, oh, a lot of people line up for this show starting about an hour ahead of time, and there'll be 100 or 200 people in line by the time they open the door, and they'll come in and they go to their favorite artists and you know, and take so they can get a painting that they like. And people don't do that for my art. when they rush in, they're not coming to where I am. They just sort of saunter over there after a while, you know? And so almost always for the first hour I go, oh no, am I not gonna sell a thing in this show? This is horrible. Because she said that this is a good show. And people, they sell a lot of art. And it usually takes at least an hour before I sell my first one, but the last 3 ones that I did, after expenses, I was making more than $4,000 per show. And so I thought, oh, this is great. So when I did the art in the park up at This Is the Place, you know, and I thought, this will be sort of the same clientele as the 135 show. This will be great. I'll make a few $1,000s, you know, hopefully, you know. And so, but I don't know what it was. I only made like a few $100s. And one couple almost bought a $4,000 painting. They were standing there talking to me about it, and they were saying, should we buy it? Yeah.
Yes.
And I even said, okay, if you buy it, I'll give you one of these smaller ones too for free. And they said, oh, let us think about it by ourselves. You know, that surprised me, because usually people go, oh, great. And they ended up not buying. So anyway, ups and downs, remember that. And you're not alone. Let's see. Oh, resistance. There's a famous old book by some Japanese guy called The Art of War. And then someone, yes, I see heads nodding, there's a book called The War of Art. Have you read it? Yeah. And the main thing she talks about in that is resistance. And when I read that book 3 times, or at least it's the type that you can just pop up open anywhere and just go like that, you know, because it's each page is its own thing. But when I first started reading it, I said, what is this resistance? And she said it was like writer's block. I said, well, what's writer's block like? Because I write too, so I've written a couple novels and started some others, and when I write, it's like, ooh, and I'll just write and write and write. Oh, darn, I have to go to the bathroom. Oh, I should get a drink of water. I should eat lunch. You know, but then, but I don't write a lot because I think, well, I can't make money at it. So, but anyway, so I didn't understand writer's block. But then I realized I have artist block, and that is, you know, I get things, okay, I've showered, I got dressed, and I've eaten breakfast, and I've taken care of this and that, maybe I've gone on a walk. Okay, now I have 4 hours to work on art. And then I go, but I don't want to now. I'd be excited about it, and then it doesn't work. Has anybody here experienced that? Oh, okay. I know some people don't, actually. Okay, here's another thing related to this. There are a good number of artists that I know, and some of them that I went to school with, that earn a good living at art. And one of them, his habit, I don't know if he still has that habit, but when I used to talk to him a lot, he worked 9 to 5 every day. He'd come into his studio at 9, start painting. At 5 o'clock, he'd clean his brushes and quit. You know, and he'd eat lunch in between for a half hour. And he did that just like a regular job. I knew another artist that the way he worked is whenever he had a show coming up, he'd have a show twice a year. This was Chris Young. He'd work like 80 to 100 hours a week. And, you know, sometimes staying up all night the nights before to get his paintings done. He's one of those types that, you know, spends like, he can spend 40 hours on a painting, you know, doing very detailed, lifelike, photographic type. But, and then once the show was over, and and then he'd sort of mess around and do whatever. Oh, I got another show I got to start preparing for. So then he'd go into that work, but see, he put in his hours that way. He put in the same amount of hours, but just in a different way. And then someone else I know that's quite successful, Brian Krasnick, he paints like I think 3 days a week pretty much, but he paints all day for 3 days a week, and then he does whatever the other days. He has his weekends all free and stuff like that. So he puts in his hours, but in that manner. And the way I put in my hours is whenever I can overcome resistance. And that's something, so I'm not very diligent, and I probably would be quite successful by now if I was diligent like them. So that's something you guys got to do if you want to be serious about it. Figure out a way to overcome that resistance, that artist block. Does anybody have suggestions for that? Anything they've done to find, well, whenever it's time for me to paint, but I don't feel like it, but if I do this, then it overcomes that. Has anyone found anything? Yeah?
I found that if I leave town and participate in a plein air competition, then I'm cranking out paintings like nobody's business.
So he said that he goes to a plein air competition, that makes him crank out paintings. Somebody else? Tom?
I know exactly what you mean by resistance, and I'm in the midst of the middle of it right now. But I know a way out, and what you do is you just put away whatever your distraction is, and even if it makes you cry, you just start painting. You just start making art, and it may be junk at first, but after a while, what you're doing is you're developing momentum and inertia that helps you to keep rolling on and keep. Really, you're trying to get yourself into a new groove, into a new habit. And I found that when I do that, I'm in a new rhythm of making art, and it can sustain me for quite some time.
Let me add to that, sometime said further. So you make paintings even if they're junk. Someone was once talking to me, he was a new artist, he's saying, well, my work isn't turning out. And I said, it feels like I'm wasting my time. And I said, you know those 1,000 or 2,000 paintings I've done that I had to get rid of? Those were not a waste. They were a foundation for the good paintings that are coming on top of them. So it is not a bad thing to create garbage. In fact, it's better to create garbage than to not do art. Did somebody else have another?
If he had a good night's sleep, because I find that if I am very tired, then it's very difficult to sit down at the easel and paint. Many times I hit a wall where I just don't know what I'm doing wrong with my painting. I'll set it aside and I will work in my studio to organize it, put things away. I may go ahead and, gesso a bunch of canvases in preparation. And then I'll sit down and say, okay, what am I going to do today? And even one sketch, all I have to do is just one that says I accomplished something that day.
Yeah, I too found that if I at least do a drawing, or start the drawing of a painting, even if that's all I've done that day, that's at least, oh, I had that success. Let me build upon that. And rather than thinking of failures, lately I've learned, focus on success, not failures. Even if your day's full of failures, find the little successes that you have had, even if it's not in art, and build upon those.
One of my favorite phrases comes from a Walt Disney cartoon, Meet the Robinsons. And the Meet the Robinsons, where the main character was an inventor, and it seemed like this little kid was always failing. And when he goes back, when he goes to the future to meet his future family, his future wife and children, and he's at a And he said, yes, but what did you learn?
Hmm.
And keep moving forward was Walt Disney's motto. No matter what happens, he keeps moving forward. And I have days like that where things just get screwed up and fail. I sit down and think, what did I learn? Let's start all over again, because it's just a piece of canvas, a little bit of oil, and a little bit of time.
Hmm. Oh, yes.
What medium do you use to make your sketches?
Oh, well, first off, I didn't bring any pictures, but if you look at rickshortenart.com on your phone, you can see what my work looks like. But, or that advertisement they sent out about this, that has some of my paintings. The way I paint, mostly, not always, sometimes I paint differently, but mostly how I've been painting the past few years is I draw with charcoal, first a line drawing with charcoal, and I fix that, and then I do glazing with oil paint over that. Occasionally I'll use acrylics, and occasionally I'll use only opaque paint, but usually it's glazing over charcoal drawing. And the way I got to that, because whenever I would draw a drawing to start a painting, I'd go, I like that drawing and I don't want to lose it. And so I started doing glazing so that the drawing stayed, and that's my style now, you know. Sometimes the drawing gets close to covered up, but usually it's pretty obvious.
What kind of glaze do you use over the charcoal?
What kind of,
Glaze do you use over the charcoal?
well, any oil painting medium.
Oh.
Oh, any oil painting medium. I once bought, I've used various stuff. I used to love liquid, but I can't use that anymore. I don't get a allergic reaction or anything, but the smell stays really strong in my nose. It makes me feel uncomfortable, so I can't use liquid anymore. I know somebody who, they used to love liquid, but now she can't even be in. She said, well, I even tried painting outside with it, you know, with fresh hair. And she said, I couldn't even do it outside. She gets a reaction. Her face turns red and stuff like that. So, yeah, I use, some people say, oh, oil paints are toxic. Well, no, oil paints aren't, except some of the oil paint itself isn't, but some pigments in oil paints can be toxic, like cadmium and lead. Like raw umber is technically edible. It's just some clay with linseed oil in it, you know, or poppy seed or whatever. And if you have reactions to things, you can use like walnut oil or walnut alkyd as a medium, and just straight oil paint those and use the non-toxic, don't use cadmium and lead.
John Boone developed, any of you know John? He developed a pretty bad allergy to oils, and so he ended up going with acrylic, and he uses the golden open acrylics. And he has, I think, some type of medium he can add to that to even retard the drying of the acrylic even more. And I'll tell you, I've never seen anyone make acrylic look like oil like John does. It's pretty amazing how he works.
Well, that's a good thing to hear.
So what medium did you say you use since you don't use liquid?
Well, I got about a few years ago, I bought about 20 different kinds of mediums, but I stayed away from anything that had turpentine in it, because turpentine is not good for, I love the smell of that, but it's not good for you. And I tried them all out, and some of them that said low odor or no odor did have a strong odor to me, an unpleasant odor, you know, that sort of bothered me. And the one that I ended up liking a lot, and it's low odor. It does have some petroleum distillate in it, but it's not obvious, is neomegill. And it's sort of a gel, well, it's sort of a runny gel, but I found that's really nice. And I often paint, sometimes I will do a whole painting without using any brushes. I cut up paper towels into little squares and then fold them in quarter and fourths, and I will use those as my brushes for glazing and sometimes putting on opaque paint. And I can do whole paintings without using a brush, but sometimes I will use brushes. So it depends, you know. There's lots of different ways of doing things. And I've been experimenting with, on little drawings I've been doing, and I'm gonna start doing it on bigger paintings, is sometimes using rollers to apply the paint. You know, printmaking rollers. And some people use, for patterns, you can cut little stamps out of foam. There's all sorts of stuff you can make stamps out of, and they'll use that like for a pattern on a dress, a leaf pattern or something like that. And people that do abstract work will do things like have paint, and while it's still wet, put crinkled aluminum foil or crinkled paper on it to make a texture on it and stuff like that. But anyway, did anybody else have something they wanted to say about getting over resistance? Okay, so, one of the points I wanted to make is...
I have something to say.
Yeah.
One of my most profound experiences of getting over resistance
Yeah.
was when I decided to look at what was truth and what was the negativity that was entering my brain and saying, you're a terrible painter, this and this. And I spent 5 hours trying to work on one little part of a painting, and I hated it by the time I was done. Still, I had scraped and scraped and started. I'm just like, I'm terrible, I'm the bad artist, everyone's gonna know if I even, if anyone sees this painting. Anyway, we had been working on just recognizing truth.
Mm-hmm.
And my husband said, what is the truth about that painting? And I said, actually, it's pretty good, and anyway, we just talked through it, and I think we can get really negative with ourselves sometimes.
You need to step back sometimes, take time away from a painting.
I went for a walk, and we had that big, long talk and lots of tears. I went for a walk, and I came back, and in 15 minutes, I did that same thing, and I just loved it, and it was just exactly what it needed. But it was just like, I was listening to the wrong voice, you know what I mean?
Well, but also you had pushed through it. It's like, like learning to play piano, or like guitar or anything, and you go, oh, that's a difficult passage to switch from there to there, because they're hard positions and they're far apart. And so, I don't think I'll ever be able to do this fast enough, for the song and the beat of the song. But if you put in your chops, and you did it many times, so then all of a sudden it becomes like, well, why couldn't I do it before? It's so easy,
Well, and that's possibly true sometimes, but this time I was fighting myself while I was doing it the first time. I was just fighting myself by telling myself I was so bad, just that negativity. And I don't think it was as much the chops as it was my mindset and where I
Okay.
was at. Anyway, but that's another good point as well.
Yeah, Rick,
Yeah.
sometimes I think when you have it, it's because you feel like you're getting stale
Mm-hmm.
and,
Yeah.
and bored with what you're doing, and if you, call somebody up to paint with, or you, take a class or a workshop or something to kind of help you think differently and try different color combinations, different palettes, different maybe a little different style, it's just.
In case you couldn't
considerable.
hear her, she's saying that sometimes you get stale, and that's a problem, and do something new, like take a class or whatever, change colors or, well, she said a few ideas, but you can think of some, do something new or different, yeah?
When my son-in-law passed away, I couldn't pick up a brush for months.
Mhm.
And then I finally went and just slapped together, this painting. Not a great painting, but to me it's great because it broke my hesitation to just start painting again.
So once you did one, then you were able to go on
Right,
then, huh?
and this was just done in an hour and a half, and it just kind of opened something up.
See, that's another point. Sometimes it takes a lot of energy to start. To me, it takes a lot of energy to do art, but even harder, it takes a lot of energy to start doing art, to sit down and actually get marks on a surface. That takes a lot of energy. And so if you just realize that, that's part of resistance. You just go, okay, I know that I have to start making some marks and doing something, and then the resistance will go away or lessen, and then I can keep on going. So, okay, another point I wanted to make was, just as a general principle, almost in anything, it's a good idea to have a plan, even if you don't stick to it. In fact, usually you won't. I do a lot of choral composition. I write music for choirs and stuff, and for folk songs, and I write a lot of music. And I'll get this great idea, I'll do it, write it down, explore it and stuff, and go, oh, that's really great. And I'll go back to it a few hours later and go, that isn't very good. And so, but what if, I kept the beginning, but went in that direction. So even though I had this original plan, I go, but it'll be different if I vary from that plan. And art can be that way too. I've had paintings where, okay, lots of times I don't know what I'm going to do ahead of time. I just have a thing or a pile of blanks and put one in front of me. Okay, I'm going to have a head right here. Is it going to be male or female? That looks like female. Is it going to be another person? Yeah, I think there should be one here and stuff. And sometimes I'll get a composition and go, oh yeah, that's nice. And then the next day or a week or two later, I'll go, something bothers me. I got to take out that figure. So I got to deviate from the plan, you know? Yes?
I can't remember who it was. It was one of the late great artists, but he said, why would I start a painting if I knew what it was going to look like when I finished?
Oh, yeah. Let it be a journey of
Yeah.
discovery.
Yeah.
Yeah. There are some people that they want to know. They get an idea and they want it to be exact, so they get models and dress them the way they want, and they take tons of photographs and they paint from those pictures, and so that would drive me crazy. Sometimes I need a model, like I'm drawing somebody, what would their hand look like? Let's see if they were going like that, and I hold my hand and go, okay, yeah, that's how it looks, or get a mirror, and it just, if you try to study it enough from real life, then you can make it up. I make my stuff up, so one of those types. Oh, putting yourself out there, isn't it? For me, it was scary the first times that when I started getting back into art, 10 years ago, and painting people, because I hadn't been doing people very much before since school. and to say, to take it to people and go, well, what do you think of this, you know? And you gotta find people who will be honest, you know? Some people are gonna get, oh, that's nice. They'll say that no matter what it looks like. Great work. But you gotta find people who will be honest, but I guess in a kind way, constructive way, you know. Well, there's this isn't working here, and this isn't working. You know, this is okay, this is that, and that's good, but, and you've gotta, well, from my experience is like, I've just got to plan on feeling horrible for an hour afterwards, go to see the truth, you know? Oh, yeah. And sometimes I cannot tell if a painting is good until I put it in front of somebody else and then watch their reaction. Or take a batch of paintings to a show, or like I have 20 paintings, but I need 10 of them for a show, then I start going, and I think all 20 of them are good, and then when I start deciding what's going to go in a show, I go, oh, well, you know, I don't think that one's good enough. I don't think that one's good enough. So showing them for 4 people or just choosing them for a show can help you decide whether a painting is good or not. Something that's been really helpful for me solving art problems and other problems in my life oh darn it, what's it called? I forgot her name. She's written a few books and Walking Through This World. I don't know. She's written books about making art, but it's and I've met a number of artists who do this. Is every morning you're supposed to do it. The first thing in the morning is write 3 pages, train of thought writing, just whatever comes to your mind. And I don't do it every morning, and sometimes I don't get 3 pages, and sometimes I do it later in the day, and sometimes it gets split up by other activities in between. But when I write those 3 pages, I actually learn a lot. And she says, and don't ever go back and read them again. But I do. Because when I get something that's good for me to remember, I'll do it like that, and then every once in a while I'll go back and read things that to me were inspiration or an answer to a problem. Lots of times, and I don't know how to do train of thought writing very well. It just seems like I can only do focused train of thought. I start up and go, what problems do I need to solve? And I'll think of a problem and I'll go, what could be a solution to that? And I'll write out, and sometimes write just dumb stuff that comes to mind. And sometimes at the very end of 3 pages, then I'll get a line that tells me what to do, how to solve that problem. So I'd recommend that to you guys. Oh, meditation. To me, meditation, a mindfulness meditation, it's where you sit there and you're supposed to try to make your mind empty, and well, you can read about it. It's very common. To me, it's very boring to do that. Some people have interesting experiences when they do it. I don't. It's very boring, but when I do it regularly, even if it's just 5 minutes per day, I find that I get things done that I haven't done, that I've been planning on doing for weeks or months or even years. There's some things that I had been putting off for years, and when I started meditating regularly, I'd spontaneously do those things and get them done, like clean the garage. So is there a clock? I don't know. Oh, it's 8, is that correct?
Yep.
Okay. And so it's on my list of things that I should do every day, but I don't. But when I do it regularly, it's helpful, and it helps me do art better too. Has anybody else had experience with meditation helping them like that? That's helped you?
Yeah, so much,
Just helped your art too?
yeah.
Like, and to overcome resistance?
I go to the University of Utah in art, and I'm taking an art
Uh-huh.
class from an Asian man, and he
Uh-huh.
said rest and meditation is the best thing you can do for your art.
If you didn't hear, she said she's taken some classes from an Asian fellow at the U of U in art, and he said the best thing you can do for your art is rest and what?
Meditation.
Rest and meditation.
What's meditation as you define it?
Like just laying for 5 minutes and focusing your mind on your breath. So everything washes away and just stay focused on your breath.
Kind of like yoga then.
Well,
Except
it's
not moving.
You don't have to move or
Yeah.
going on a walk, but just concentrating on your breathing. Just focusing on the breathing.
Yeah.
Or writing,
Yeah,
just like you said,
yeah.
the writing.
Meditation can happen in many different forms. It can even happen while you're walking and stuff. A few times I've had a walk where it turned into a meditation where I just felt at peace with the world, and good things were going through my mind, but my mind wasn't going like that, 1,000 thoughts a minute. It was very focused and peaceful and restful while I was walking, but it was in a quiet place. Yeah.
And if you do it regularly, when stress does happen, you don't go over the threshold. It lowers that threshold so you're not tipping over it all the time.
Don't get as stressed as you used to, yeah. See, business. Okay, why do we do art? In conjunction, well, because of a book I was just was listening to the audio version of a book called "What Is Your Why?" or "Why Do We Do?" No, what? Why? Something like that. It's like you've got to have a why, and I've always. So I sat down and let me figure out why do I do art, and so I was thinking at first. Okay, I do art because, well, I have to earn a living, and that's what I want to do to earn a living. So I do art to make money. But this book was saying, no, get down to real foundation. So I was thinking, well, I do art because I've always wanted to be an artist. Sometimes I don't like doing art, but I love being an artist. I like the whole thing. I like the meeting, going to shows, doing shows, buying supplies. I love buying art supplies. And I love having piles of notebooks, even if I don't sketch much. and oh, wow, I need to buy some paints. Yeah, oh, I'm gonna go look at Den's Blick Art Supplies and order some, see what else there is. But anyway, and I like preparing panels, and I like arranging my studio so that it's more efficient and works well and all that stuff. I don't like cleaning it though, darn. But anyway, I get big resistance to cleaning. But I love planning. Well, if I make, what should I do for this show? I'll do 10 of this size and see how many, maybe 5 of them will turn out, and how should I frame them, and stuff like that. So I love the whole thing of being an artist, but sometimes I don't like to actually do art. So what is my purpose? Still, get deeper. Why do I do art? So I was thinking, well, okay, it's because I know that I can get into the zone and it becomes very relaxing and restful and time passes quickly. It's hard for me to get into that zone, but that can happen. And you've probably experienced, I remember once I was drawing for a class assignment, drawing a detailed Japanese slipper that had all sorts of designs on it, and in pencil, and I started, and 4 hours later, what? It's been 4 hours? I thought it was only been a half hour. Anyway, I wish I could get that all the time, but then I realized, okay, I do art because I think that it's something enjoyable. In my mind, it's enjoyable. It isn't always enjoyable to actually do it, but I know it can be. So it's something enjoyable, and I have the potential to earn money from it. Then I thought, is that the only reason I do art? And then I realized, well, I want other people to like it. I want to do art that I like to do, and I like the results, and other people like it, and they like it good enough to buy it. And so finally, I came up with this. I do art in order to have a rich experience creating wonderful art so that others can have a rich experience viewing it. I think, could you break it down any further than that, get it more fundamental than that? I don't think so. If anybody else can, I'd like to hear.
I like the process of creating.
Yeah?
I mean, just
She said she likes the process of creating.
being a creator of something.
Yeah.
No one else. It's very.
Oh, wrong paper. Ups and downs. Oh, so, but art is a business. I mean, if you want to make it pay, if you want to at least pay for itself, let alone, and in particularly, if you want to earn money at it, and not only just earn money, but that be your sole support, living, it has to be a business. I've come to the conclusion that for me, the best thing when I can overcome resistance is to do 4 hours of art creation a day, that's drawing or painting, and then ideally would be 1 or 2 hours of marketing a day, which would be including just looking through Instagram and maybe posting on Instagram, figuring out emails for art, figuring out, finding shows that you can enter and trying to get in galleries, whatever you need to do to get people aware of your art is marketing, whatever that is. I can put that in marketing, and like if I do a show one day, I consider that's my marketing. And if that takes 4 hours, that's 2 days worth of marketing. So, anyway, yeah, so, but there is a business side to this whole thing, and you are, how did somebody put it once really good? You are the main, no one else is gonna be your promoter. No one else is, it'd be great. I used to think, oh yeah, when I was in school, I'll just create this great art and people are just gonna go, oh, that's great, and I won't have to do anything. People will just want it, and galleries will come to me and all that, and all that, and every show I enter, that will sell and I'll win a prize and stuff because my art will be so great and people will just love it. And no, that's not the way it works. Well, it almost works that way for Chris Young. He's that one I told you about, but yeah, it doesn't work that way. You are, I forgot the term, promoter? You're the only one who's going to, if it's not you pushing your art, it's nobody.
I just tell my students, in the end, no one's gonna care about your art as much as you will.
Right. Really, nobody does care
No
except
one
you.
cares.
Yeah.
Let's face it, nobody cares for us.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay, and what are, there's so much different art. Okay, when I went to BYU, you know, it took me a long time to get through because I was changing majors and going part-time and stuff. And so I started in '74, but didn't graduate with a bachelor's till '87. But, you know, I was in Japan for 2 years, and I took one semester off so I could, because my wife had a business trip to France, so to Paris, so I saved the money for that semester and went to Paris instead for a couple weeks and to the museums and stuff. But anyway, and we had 3 children before I graduated and all that stuff. But anyway, I wish I could remember what I was going to say. What were we talking about before? Business, yeah, business, okay.
Having enough, maybe, I can't remember what you were talking about.
Yeah. Mm.
You're your own best promoter.
Oh, art that is of its time and timeless. Oh, yeah, and that reminds me of something else. So, the BYU Art Department today is a very different animal than what it was when I went there. It was still very, very conservative, you know, figure painting, or at least still life painting or landscape or something like that, you know, painting or printmaking that was like that, you know. And now, I occasionally go and see what students are doing in the shows and things like that, and well, plus other places, and BYU tends to be more conservative than other schools, but it's like, okay, well, this even got in the Springville show, and I talked to the guy, and he told me about doing it. He said, yeah, I was driving in the canyon and saw a dead deer, and so I spray painted its head pink, and wrapped it with plastic and took a picture of it. And that got into the Springville show, the Spring Salon. But anyway, yeah. 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 That guy's a nice guy. I like him, but and you know, and that's interesting. Or you guys what was it, about 5 years ago? Somebody taped a banana to a wall with duct tape, and he got like $250,000 prize for it or something like that. I don't remember. It was a lot of money. You know, it was some big museum somewhere. Yeah, but anyway, it was just a real bit, you know, and of course it started rotting, so it didn't last for very long.
It's interactive.
That's part of the art.
And duct tape's not very archival itself, you know. But,
Oh, yes, it is.
Oh.
Have you ever tried to remove duct tape from something after 10 years?
but it deteriorates, so you pull off the outer layer and the formerly sticky
No,
parts is dried up and stuck to
It
it.
fossilizes.
Yeah. It lasts, but it changes. Gorilla tape's a little bit better, but anyway. So, oh yeah, the point is, try to do art that is of its time, yet timeless. So, it's not a bad thing to say 20 years from now and say, oh, yeah, they painted that in the, well, say you look at a painting and say, oh, those look like paintings from like the 1980s, or those look like they're from the 2020s now, you know. That's not a bad thing as long as it's timeless. Because you know, you look at the Impressionist paintings, you go, oh, that's definitely from the end of the 1800s in France, you know, or around that area. But yet, it's timeless. A lot of it is, not everything, you know. So are you creating art that's timeless? You know, and that's sort of hard if you're one of hundreds of landscape painters in Utah. How do you, well, timeless, but also how can you be different, at least a little ways, from all the other landscape painters, you know, that are here in Utah painting the same subject matters, you know? And that's not meant to cut down landscape painters. I sometimes go landscape plein air painting and I actually paint quite different when I do plein air painting than I do my regular painting. But I saw a way a lot of the landscape painters paint, and I thought, I love that, but I don't want to compete with them. So I paint differently when I do landscape painting. Let's see. I'm going to sing a song. I was originally planning to start with a song, talk for a while, sing another song, talk for a while, and then I decided when I got here, no, I'm not going to sing it all, but I decided I'm going to. And so when I write songs, I told you, like, starting with a plan. It's similar to art or painting. I sort of fiddling around. Oh, that's a nice little beginning of a melody there. How should it go, you know? And I get a series chord and go, oh, that's really nice. And I write it down and think that's good. And then I start going, well, it isn't really exciting there. And so I'll change it. And I may end up going a completely different direction than I originally planned, and end up with something a lot better than if I had forced myself to stick to the plan and finish the song the way I had thought I should when I started it. Now, something different between music. How many of you play an instrument or sing or something like that? Yeah, so maybe a third of you. A lot of serious artists do something, get pretty serious in a way about music too. Like Brian Krashisnik, he writes a lot of songs. He plays guitars and singing, has a little band that plays with him. Ansel Adams was a concert pianist. You know Ansel Adams, the photographer? Yeah, and well, and not all artists do, but a lot of artists do. It's probably more common well, I haven't done any studies, read any studies, but it seems like more artists, higher percentage of them are into music than others. But there's a lot of them that are way into sports too, but anyway. Energy. Have you ever looked at your paintings of yours that you think, okay, these ones work and these ones don't, and could you say that these ones that work have energy to them, and the ones that don't, that work, they don't have energy? And sometimes I go, and I don't know why that one works and that one doesn't. Oh, something related she said earlier. Sometimes there's cursed paintings. No matter how hard you try, you gotta fix that face so it looks better. Still doesn't work right. No matter how hard you try, repaint it 10 times, try to fix that face, it never works. Finally go, because it's a cursed painting. Yeah. Just start new, start another one. Okay, unlike art, in music, there's the composition, and then there's the performance. You know, art, the composition is the making the art, but the people just look at it, you know. And so but the energy comes when you're making the art. The energy gets put in there as you. But for music, the energy comes from the way it's performed. Something. That is most irritating. What is that?
That's your microphone.
Is this microphone?
Yeah.
Oh, just sort of
It
static
has a
stuff?
life of its own, yeah.
Oh, okay. Now, here's a song, and if I just, sometimes I think, I'll sing a song and I'll go, man, that was boring, that didn't sound very good. And so like if I just went, oh, hallelujah, hallelujah. That's pretty boring. There's no energy to that, right? So, I was exaggerating a bit, but sometimes if you're being lazy, that's how it turns out, or if you're not thinking about it, you know? So you just have to put up with something's a little bit out of tune. I don't know why it's doing. Sorry. But if I sing it like this, hallelujah, 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 glory, glory to the Lord, glory to the Lord, hallelujah, 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 glory, glory to the Lord, glory, glory, amen. Walk with me, walk with me, walk with me. Together we shall, side by side, walking to that holy mountain, the mountain of the Lord, where the woodlands will run together and the sun lay down. Should go a little higher. Having the lion feet together and the chance of walking together, side by side, the lion and the lamb, poisonous fruit that move away when a little child comes play, when the wolf and the lions will work together and lay down with the king. Having the lion feet together and the chance of walking together. Hallelujah. That had more energy than just going, hallelujah, hallelujah. It's the same thing, but same chords and same singing. And so, you've got to do that with your painting too. And there's so many elements that go into making a good painting. It's like that sometimes, you know, you're putting how many marks go down on a painting? How many marks do you think could go down? A few hundred? And each of those marks makes a count. What color it is, the texture of it, and whether it's visible or not, and the direction of it, and how it relates to everything around it. And you're putting, so, I mean, you're doing a fantastic thing with your brain for every mark that if you're thinking about it and doing a good job, every mark you're putting down, you're making many decisions just for each mark. And your brain is probably going like that, but most of it's unconscious. And sometimes you got to do it purposely. I tend to start getting in close up and go, oh, that looks really nice. Oh yeah, that looks really nice right there. And then, oh, the whole thing together doesn't look good. So, nice texture there, up close and everything, but the whole thing together doesn't look good. So, some artists, and it's on my list of things I should do when I paint to make good paintings is to take the long view often, step back from your work. I've heard another thing you can do if you don't want to move back or don't have much space, is just turn around and look at it in a little, hold out a mirror and look at it that way. Or paint a few of them, start a few of them, stick them across the room.
I was gonna tell you, Minerva Tiger, in her small house that they lived in Wyoming, she used to
Does anybody have any questions? Oh, yeah. Here's another thing. So I got into a gallery in Oregon, and it's a nice gallery, I thought, in Cannon Beach, and she said, okay, yeah, I think I brought 15 paintings, of various sizes, mostly more bigger, and she said, oh, these are great. Oh, I love these. These will sell really quick. And they just fit in perfect with the gallery, and it's what my clientele likes. And but that didn't happen. She sold like 3 or 4 a year is all, and she thought they would all sell within a year, all 15, and then every year I'd be bringing out more, and I did end up bringing some more the next year, but sales slowed down even more. So, and then in the pandemic, that gallery closed because they closed down the whole city of Cannon Beach, and it just wasn't feasible to keep going, paying the rent and stuff like that. But they had already been starting a second gallery in Astoria, Oregon, and so they said, okay, well, anything that's in there, we're going to move it to Astoria, to that gallery. And so they still have my stuff, and they still sell 1 or 2 a year, And then I get in galleries, and then pandemic, and another gallery that I displayed in the Cape, just for like one little show a year or 2, that closed. And then another gallery that had a bunch of my work in it, that one closed. So that was not fun, the pandemic. But the interesting thing, and a lot of other artists had this too, at the end of that first year, 2020, plus I was still doing framing for other artists, and a lot of my orders were canceled because we don't have our shows anymore, so I don't need that batch of frames, So I lost my framing orders, galleries closed, and things where shows I was going to take art to, they weren't happening. So this is terrible. But the end of that year, I sold more art than if it had been a regular year. Yeah, because I think at the end of the year, everybody's going, let's get out and do things. We're tired of being stuck at home, So a lot of people, I heard some other artists were the same way. They did really good at the end of 2020, even though they did bad at the beginning. So I still get in little galleries, but this is supporting that I did, like one gallery in Provo. Every year they want me to bring some Christmas and nativity paintings, so I'll do a whole bunch of little to big, to sort of little to medium-sized one, and they'll sell about 10 or 15 of those a year. In fact, they don't just sell them at Christmas, they sell majority of them at Christmas time, but they'll sell them throughout the year. They used to have me take back the ones that didn't sell in January, but now they just keep them, and they keep selling. Even like last September and October, 5 of those little Christmas nativity paintings sold. So things like that. Oh, selling on Instagram. When I first started doing that in, I forgot when was it, 2020? I actually got a lot of sales from Instagram, and just a post, and I'd say, this is for sale for this much, and direct message me if you're interested. And I sold like 6 paintings in December that way, and not just small ones, but some of them were good sized ones. So, but then that slowed down because they changed the way they do things. But I still do sell something there, so that's an outlet for you guys, to get an Instagram following and then sell to them, get an email, sign up newsletter, and sell to them. Time to end. Any questions? Oh, yeah?
Since I'm kind of new, I don't have a website or anything that I'm doing now, so I was curious, what platform you use for your websites and other friends?
Squarespace. Squarespace is a really good one if you're doing it yourself, because it's a decent price, and and their things look good. And you can, spend a bit of time, and it's not too hard to figure out how to put your stuff in it and make it how you want.